On this, let's bring in Virginia Republican Congressman Rob Wittman. He is the vice chair of the House Armed Services Committee and serves on the Select Committee on Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party. So we don't know exactly what was said in this meeting between Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, and his Chinese counterpart. But reading the tea leaves of what Blinken and his office have said, how do you think it went?
Well, it sounds like to me that Wang Yi was there to place blame on the United States, to deflect blame from China. Clearly, this is China's violation of sovereign airspace. When they didn't own up to that, when they didn't apologize for that, it tells me that they don't want to take responsibility. They're going to continue this aggressive behavior. Another element, too, is that they look at this as though it's not a problem. That violation of sovereign airspace is not a problem, and it is. But this is how China operates. We should all be very aware that this aggressive behavior is how Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party are going to deal with not just the United States, but the world. And we need to be ready to strongly respond when these things happen.
Yeah, they do like to push the envelope, and then they like to deny that they pushed the envelope or did anything wrong and that it's just the United States that's overreacting. So if you were President Biden, they canceled that intended meeting between Blinken and the Chinese counterpart. They canceled that, but other than that, what would you suggest the United States response be?
Well, I think what we have to do is to look at what China does outside of their sovereign spaces and look at how we can engage there. Now, listen, I don't want this to accelerate to a higher level of engagement, but I want to make sure that the Chinese know that there is a consequence to their violating U.S. sovereign airspace. Doesn't mean we necessarily fly a balloon in there, but what it means is that we show that we are determined not only to defend our airspace, but to make sure we stand by and counteract China's aggressive behavior around the world.
Well, but there's been a lot of aggressive Chinese behavior around the world, and not much has happened to them. They've built military bases on those islands in disputed waters. The international court said it's illegal, and China said, so what? There just hasn't been much reaction, much pushback to anything that the communist Chinese have done.
John, you're right. There aren't consequences that China sees in real ways to their aggressive behavior. So what happens? More of that's going to occur. It's kind of like the bully in the playground. If there's not a consequence to that bullish behavior, it'll just continue to happen. The United States needs to be very specific about, if you continue this sort of aggressive behavior, here are the consequences. And it has to be things that affect China, whether it's strategic isolation. I think there are things that we can do to say, hey, listen, no longer are we going to deal with you in these ways. There will be consequences of this. We will isolate you in certain ways that will have an impact on the Chinese Communist Party, first of all, and then the country of China.
Why is it that China is still treated as though it's sort of a third world nation? You know, they get favorable status when it comes to things like pollution. You know, the United States is actually sending sending the Chinese money. Why?
They shouldn't. China is a nation that's competing with the world powers. They are not a developing nation. Their economy is growing at record pace. We need to treat them as such. We need to make sure that there are consequences, again, to their behaviors, not sending them money, hold them responsible for being a responsible person or a responsible entity in the world community. The person being responsible is Xi Jinping, the Chinese Communist Party in the country being the entity that's responsible. If there are not consequences to their lack of action, and if we don't treat them consistently as far as our policy and don't encourage this bad behavior by sending them money for the efforts there that do nothing to reduce carbon in the atmosphere, all of those elements, I think, send China a message, and that is that behavior is acceptable, and there's no consequence to it. If that continues, they'll continue to act badly, and I argue their behavior will get even worse.
We know that the administration has provided some briefings on this Chinese spy craft and its capabilities. Are you satisfied with the transparency, at least within government, of the administration thus far?
Well, John, the briefings that are provided don't give a whole lot of additional detail over that which we find out through open sources. So I'm very very uncontent or discontent with where we are right now. Now, there's more information being gathered. The pieces of this are being examined there at Quantico, and I think we'll get some more information, but it'll be way after the fact. I think we all know instinctually what this balloon was doing, what the platform was doing. Let me tell you what I think the most damaging part of this is. We know that it was gathering communications and other sensor intelligence. But the most damaging thing that I believe, John, is that this balloon flew over the United States unimpeded, and the Chinese were able to watch in incredible detail exactly what we did to react to this balloon coming over. They wanted us to know about it, but they wanted to see what we did because that reveals to them what they could do in a situation where there is a greater threat to the United States, and they would know what to do to counter what we have done when we saw this balloon fly over. That ought to concern everybody. It deeply concerns me.
Yeah, there are an awful lot of things they could have carried in that payload bay that could do an awful lot of harm to this country.
Yes.
Congressman
Yes.
Rob Wittman, good to have you on. Thank you.